Many years ago when I was 13, I was visiting with a friend at his house. We'll call him Bob. Along with another friend of his. We'll call him Rick. We were the only ones home during the time. During our visit, we were doing normal bullshit that 13-year-olds do, like playing Xbox, shooting Nerf guns at each other, and things like that. Both Bob and Rick regularly attended church, and even went to a Christian private school. They were both relatively sheltered, and weren't the type of kids to pull pranks or be mischievous. Late in the afternoon, I was bullshitting with Rick while Bob was playing video games about 10 feet away. And then Rick decided that he would try and make a pentagram so that he could summon the spirit of his dog who had recently died. He told me that he had read about it somewhere and wanted to try it. I was, and still am, open-minded yet skeptical, so I watched as he proceeded to do his thing. I watched as Rick took a bunch of Nerf darts and formed a pentagram shape on the floor. He then said whatever words that were required to complete the ritual, and as soon as he was finished, an alarm in the house immediately started blaring. The three of us were a bit freaked out, and Rick destroyed the pentagram. We then ran outside and chilled for about an hour or so. It took the alarm approximately a half hour to stop blaring. Bob was my neighbor, so I went over to his house hundreds of times over the course of my childhood, and I never heard an alarm go off that sounded like that one. It almost sounded like an electronic telephone ringing one non-stop tone. When we all eventually went back inside, night had fallen. The three of us started playing Halo and chalked it up to a weird coincidence. After a couple of hours, I convinced Rick to try and make a pentagram again to see if we could replicate what had happened earlier. He obliged and again made a pentagram out of the Nerf darts in the same spot as before. During both of these events, Rick and I were standing right next to each other by the pentagram, and Bob was about 10 feet away in plain sight playing video games. Once again, as soon as Rick was finished forming a pentagram and said the magic words, the same alarm went off. We all three again ran outside and waited until the alarm went silent, which again took about half an hour. We were all pretty weirded out by it, and we decided not to try to do it again. Bob was noticeably freaked out, and Rick was also in disbelief that it had actually done anything. We decided among the three of us to not talk about it with anyone else, lest others would think we were just making up stories. It took me about 2 years to finally tell anyone else about it, and at this point, I've told anyone who's willing to listen, so I can try to get a better understanding about what happened. I remember going home that night, paranoid that a spirit would haunt me, but nothing of the sort ever happened. Bob is still in contact, but has since moved away, and I haven't seen Rick in about 8 years. I brought this up with Bob a few years ago, and I asked if he remembered. I described it to him, and he confirmed that it did in fact happen the exact same way I remember, but he didn't seem to want to talk about it, so I didn't press it. Since this happened, I've become much more interested in the unknown. If anyone can lead any additional insight on what may have caused this to happen, I would really appreciate it. My father-in-law lost his battle with cancer and died on January 2nd. His decline in the end was shockingly fast. He went from able and relatively well to unable to walk to dead in like 8 weeks. The funeral was last weekend. My husband's family is very close-knit, and my father-in-law was everyone's rock, so it's been pretty hard for everyone. Last night, around 6 p.m., the witching hour for anyone with young kids, our kids were getting a bit hyped up and crazy, so my husband put on an old playlist of mellow music that we haven't listened to in ages. The song Xerxes by the Deftones was playing, when all of a sudden the volume on the HomePod spikes up so fucking loud, like as loud as it can go. I was in the other room with our youngest, and thought my husband was just messing around to make our eldest laugh or something. But he was freaked out. He hadn't touched the volume. When he told me that, I got goosebumps and burst into tears. That Deftones song is all about saying goodbye. The chorus is, "Goodbye, I'll stay in heaven, new worlds, and I'll be waving goodbye." We don't know what to make of it. Well, we know what we want it to mean, but that raises so many questions. Has anyone else had an experience like this after a loved one died? It's weird, right? Whatever, lol. Might as well check it out. I haven't seen a horror movie that's actually scared me in a while. That was the last text Lacey had sent me before she went missing. I know it's irrational, but I hate myself for not doing something, for not stopping her. But how was I supposed to know? How could I have anticipated anything that was going to happen after? The film, or whatever the hell it is, made its way into our small town like a plague only a few days ago. 12 people bought tickets to it. 12 people are now missing. Among them was Lacey, my girlfriend of over 2 years. At the risk of sounding like that guy, our future was looking nothing but promising. We have plans. Well, we did. Until Mr. fucking Blank showed up. This is nowhere near a conventional missing persons case, of course. The rabbit hole goes deep here, and honestly, the details simply don't make any sense. From what I managed to dig up, this is a general timeline of what had happened. An option to buy tickets for the film shows up at one of the 3 theaters in our town, which is about a 20-minute walk from my house. Only that one. And it wasn't available online, only at the front counter of the theater itself. It wasn't supposed to be in the regular rotation. Also, none of the employees at the theater were informed about any special screening. They simply came in and saw that it had replaced the 5:30 p.m. slot for a pre-existing film. They didn't question it because why would they? The first and only screening was at 5:30 p.m. on that day. The theater wasn't the busiest, but it wasn't empty either. Of course, most people opted to skip it, given the lack of any information regarding the film. With that being said, the only people who bought tickets were younger, likely curious about the odd title. The film lasted about 1 hour and 10 minutes, with all the previews and credits considered. Pretty short for a feature, right? At 6:40 p.m., an employee entered the theater for cleanup duty. What he found were rows and rows of empty seats, with drink cups still in holders and popcorn littered all over the floors. No blood, no signs of a struggle. Nobody had left or entered the theater after the film had begun, with confirmation from the security cameras. The theaters itself had no cameras inside, so that part remains a mystery. The screen allegedly consisted of nothing but dark static. That's what we were told, at least. I have a feeling that some details were left out from there, considering the fact that the employee in question is now missing as well, also rumored to have gone into a catatonic state after being questioned. The manager of the theater, who never greeted the employees that morning as he usually did, was found dead in his office, with severe wounds around his neck left from a plastic bike lock that was likely used to strangle him. A new employee was hired about 3 weeks prior. The other employees described him as a quiet but nice guy. He was working the day of the incident. You guessed it, he's missing as well. Also suspect number 1 in the investigation. However, they're really grasping for straws at that one. I wouldn't doubt that this employee had something to do with it, but the logistics behind the whole situation just aren't cohesive enough to make that call for sure. Here are some additional details. No copy of the film has been found. No progress has been made on the search for the missing people. Hell, it hardly seems like they're even trying. The local cops have been strangely hushed about the whole thing, almost like they don't want people asking about it. They literally threatened to arrest me when I kept pressing them for details. There's been a lot of vehicles with tinted windows parked near the theater and surrounding areas, some even in my own community. Well, that's the situation. I can't focus on anything right now. My brain's scattered and my anxiety's been going through the roof. Sue me, what the hell do you expect? Lacey has got to be out there somewhere, right? How the hell is somebody just supposed to disappear into thin air? And what the hell kind of film was Mr. Blank? Christ, I'm getting a headache just thinking about it. My initial grief has been replaced more so by confusion and anger. I might just start searching for answers myself. I won't be alone though. Rose, Lacey's best friend, and Mike, her brother, are just as bent on figuring this out as I am. I'm not going in blind though. In fact, I have 2 leads. One is more of a shot in the dark, but the other should lead us somewhere concrete. I'll start off with the former. A few weeks ago, I remember my little brother telling me about a strange man he saw carved into a tree. It was allegedly accompanied by messy and frantic repetitions of the word stop around it. I didn't think anything about it at the time, but it might be relevant now. Maybe not. We'll see. The other came up while I was searching for answers online. After feverishly posting about the film on what I consider to be relevant forums and yielding no answers, somebody finally messaged me about it, claiming that they had information that I might like to know. Luckily, they're only a 3-hour drive from here and are willing to meet halfway. Is this a bad idea? Probably. Am I going to like what I find? Probably not. But the thought of Lacey being out there and God knows what kind of fucked up situation, I just can't take it. I'm not letting it end like this.